Okay, so welcome everybody. Nell's chatting with Pierre. He'll join us shortly, I'm sure. Bunch of oceans around. We got the PDF, so we can kind of get started as a continuation. Barbara said she was going to be late. She made a point because she feels really bad she's going to be late because she feels like we're doing this class from her request. No, everybody wants this. Right. For everybody, it was just a very well-timed request.
Yeah.
Because it's still something that, like, it's one of those fundamentals that a lot of us, me included, can kind of pretend to understand for even a number of years, you know, and totally get away with it. I will open with the quote from July 21st. Blavatsky says, again, from Voice of the Silence, page 13, strive with thy thoughts, unclean before they overpower thee. Use them as they will be, for if thou sparest them and they take root and grow, know well, these thoughts will overpower and kill thee. It's dramatic, but it's extremely true. Like, I think when we talk about elementals, we talk about bad vibes or bad auras, and it's a lot of it is from negative reinforcement. Now they have, you know, a psychological term for it, but
yeah,
it's one of those things too. It's just like when you're really having a hard time in life, and if you kind of surrender to that misery and pity, more misery and pity compounds, and you wonder why. It's because you're inviting it, you're making it.
well, also you're really programming it.
Yeah.
Because as you think and rethink and keep rethinking over the same pattern, it's making those connections to memories, to feeling more and more solid.
Mm-hmm. And now, like, neuroscience has proved it's actually making physical changes.
Yeah.
You're carving new pathways of thinking. Like, it's nuts.
Yeah. Yeah, I just read an article today of a neuroscientist that's doing studies on psilocybin. They want to know why does it work, because you know they're using it for school PTSD.
More and more in.
Yeah. And but they know it works. They just want to get more scientific proof of why, or understand why it works. So he, as well as other volunteers, took a single dose of 25 milligrams of psilocybin, and then had MRIs of the brain done during, and then for following 2 days and 2 weeks. And then part of the control study did a second dose 6 or 12 months later. And they said what it does is your connections disassociate.
Yeah.
But it's a temporary disassociation. So then whenever you come back, your brain is more plastic and can see things and reroute itself. And they said that's why it's really working.
Yeah.
It's not because people have this, it's not because of the experience, psychedelic experience that they have, which a lot of people, you know, depending on their state of mind.
Yeah.
Some people have a religious experience, some people have a multicolored kaleidoscope experience, some people have what would be like a intense psychotherapy experience where they see
Dark night of the soul.
a whole series of things. So yeah, it's that whole thing of the brain. But then, you know, from a theosophical point of view, we're trying to keep an open mind and at the same time understand how our physiology works so we can best advance with our own control.
Sure.
So that's the thing. But it's interesting to see some of these scientific studies that, you know, are kind of proving not only that it works, but why it works, and understanding the dangers and then also the non-dangers. You know, it's not something that you want to do on a continual basis, because then there'll be no association.
And we live in a place where we can see the outcome of that a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, there's plenty around, and yeah, it's dangerous, but So I think Aldous Huxley would have been in the exact same, he would have been the first in line to like do that MRI thing. You can still see a video on YouTube of him when he in his suit and everything, he's in a controlled laboratory environment, he sits in a chair and has this, and he just sits there, describes it as clinically as he can. And it's super interesting to see, but it's, it's Aldous Huxley. So he's got complete control of his faculties, he knows what's happening. It's pretty amazing.
What was the main object of them using suicide?
Well, because
What
because there's so many people that are on antidepressants that are psychotic that go through years of therapy and they love this help. So the reason why is because certain
Should I leave it slightly open?
certain groups of people, doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists,
An
have
elemental.
been trying to treat the soldiers that come back from war that have PTSD. And so there's a lot of anecdotal or experiential references of people using, whether it's magic mushroom, whether it's peyote, or whether it's psilocybin, a psychotropic drug that seems to work. And people that have been on antidepressants or anxiety medicine for years can then get off. But they really started studying it because so many veterans have really bad mental issues because of what they experienced, what they felt, what they saw. So and it's been going on for a while. That's why, certain states like marijuana, they've made limited use of mushrooms for that. Anyway, we might as well get started for today. So we're gonna start and kind of go into the sevenfold nature or division in Theosophy.
And for everybody listening, we're going to start
chapter 4,
page 29. Yeah.
in the Ocean of Theosophy. And it's a very short chapter, and then we can, go into some of the things more detailed.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason for it, the reason why I wanted to do this, and it was a good suggestion from the student last week, is that it's really a key. It's one of the occult keys to understanding the world and nature, the occult world, the physical world, the metaphysical world, and what she says is the super psychic world or the super metaphysical world. And she explains those terms in various places in her writings. But the thing is, it's not just a key for Theosophy. It's not just something to study just for Theosophy, because you can use that in whatever disciplines you're also studying. If you're studying Buddhism and meditation, if you're studying the Vedanta system, if you're just trying to understand how your own mind and body works, it's a major key because it shows that every constituent part of the universe man has. And all the traditions have said that, whether they say as above, so below,
Mm-hmm.
or they say, the kingdom of God is within you. All the different traditions have it, but they don't necessarily have it as a sevenfold breakdown.
Right.
Christianity says, there's body and soul, or there's spirit, soul, and body. And so HPV says that's true, but it doesn't give you a deeper insight into what those things mean, what the words mean,
Mm-hmm.
and also why it's important for the Sevenfold Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
So before we get on to page 31, I'd like to read her or Judge's introduction, which is the first couple pages, and it kind of gives us a basis of where to start from.
The introduction.
Right where you're at.
Oh.
Right at the very top of this chapter. So, Roberto, you wanna read? Okay.
Chapter 4.
Chapter 4, and we'll go through. You read the first paragraph, and then maybe maybe Kelly, you read the next. We're gonna read 2 pages, which sounds like a lot of reading, but
Right.
it's a good way to start because Judge is kind of explaining why HPB came so forcefully with this Sevenfold Constitution, and also giving a bit of a historical reference as to how people thought and, the dangers of just saying a 2-fold constitution or a 3-fold constitution. So, yeah, if you would go ahead.
Okay. So chapter 4. It's page 29 of
Page 29.
respecting the nature of men. There are 2 ideas current in the religious circles of Christendom. One is the addition, and the other the common acceptation of it. The first is not secret, to be sure, in the church, but it is so seldom dwelt upon in the hearing of the laity, as to the almost arcane for the ordinary person. Nearly everyone says he has a soul and a body. And there it ends. What the soul is, and whether it is a real person or whether it has any powers of its own, are not inquired into. The preachers usually confine themselves to its salvation or damnation. And by thus talking of it as something different from oneself, the people have acquired an underlying notion that they are not souls because the souls may be lost by them. From this has come about a tendency to materialism, causing men to pay more attention to the body than to the soul. The latter being left to the tender mercies of the priests of the Roman Catholics. And among dissenters, the care of it is most frequently put off to the dying day. But when the true teaching is known, it will be seen that the care of the soul, which is the self, is a vital matter requiring attention every day, and not to be deferred without grievous injury, resulting to the whole man, both soul and body.
Good, thanks. Kelly, do you want to read the next batch?
The Christian teaching supported by St. Paul, since upon him, in fact, dogmatic Christianity rests, is that man is composed of body, soul, and spirit. This is the 3-fold constitution of man, believed by the theologians, but kept in the background because its examination might result in the readoption of views once orthodox but now heretical. For when we thus place soul between spirit and body, we come very close to the necessity for looking into the question of the soul's responsibility, since mere body can have no responsibility. And in order to make the soul responsible for the acts performed, we must assume that it has powers and functions. From this, it is easy to take the position that the soul may be rational or irrational, as the Greeks sometimes thought. And then there is but a step to further theosophical propositions. This 3-fold scheme of the nature of man contains, in fact, the theosophical teaching of his 7-fold constitution. Because the 4 other divisions missing from the category can be found in the powers and functions of the body and soul, as I shall attempt to show later on. This conviction that man is a septenary and not merely a duad was held long ago and very plainly taught to everyone with accompanying demonstrations. But like other philosophical tenets, it disappeared from sight because gradually withdrawn at the time when in the east of Europe morals were degenerated and before materialism had gained full sway in company with skepticism, its twin. Upon its withdrawal, the present dogma of body, soul, spirit was left to Christendom. The reason for that concealment and its rejuvenescence in this century is well put by Madame H.P. Blavatsky in The Secret Doctrine. In answer to the statement, we cannot understand how any danger could arise from the revelation of such a purely philosophical doctrine as the evolution of the planetary chain. She says, the danger was this: doctrines such as the planetary chain or the seven races at once give a clue to the sevenfold nature of man. For each principle is correlated to a plane, a planet, and a race. And the human principles are, on every plane, correlated to the sevenfold occult forces, those of the higher planes being of tremendous occult power, the abuse of which would cause incalculable evil to humanity. A clue which is perhaps no clue to the present generation, especially the Westerns, protected as they are by the very blindness and ignorant materialistic disbelief in the occult, but a clue which would nevertheless be very real in the early centuries of the Christian era to the people fully convinced of the reality of occultism and entering a cycle of degradation which made them ripe for abuse of occult powers and sorcery of the worst description.
Okay, thanks. So any questions or comments before we go over to the sevenfold division? Here he's laying out a pretty good foundation of why, it was withdrawn in the first place.
Well, it's really interesting. I mean, it's not this foreign concept to a lot of faiths, to Hinduism and Buddhism. It wasn't this foreign concept of like, to Christianity, it's like, whoa, what? 4 more, but like, there was, we were just talking about Sub-Row, it was like there's 4 or 5. And so this is, it was an idea that's been around, just like what a lot of Theosophy says, it's the remnants or the evidence of these golden threads that existed, like, that at one point it was pretty common to understand this stuff.
Yeah.
What the interesting statement said, for when we thus place soul between spirit and body, we come very close to the necessity for looking into the questions of the soul's responsibility, since mere body can't have no responsibility. So I think that's like a big key thing to think about, someone to question and think about, like, who has responsibility, who is responsible, and what's, as far as like morals and ethics, who's responsible, what are they responsible, like how are they responsible for the acts, kind of gets rid of the vicarious atonement concept in Christianity.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Wow.
Roberto.
Well, the idea that which is in the Secret Doctrine, the bottom of page 30, from this, and we might say by grace of understanding, these 3 words, plane, planet, and race. A race. So not the race, but a race. Because here, race, it doesn't stand for, the Mexican race, the American race, or European race. This is humanity as a whole. And being a race, we know that Theosophy presents the idea of 7 good races. And therefore, a race is almost like saying the current state of consciousness collectively of humanity. That would be a race, more or less. I mean, there's many forms to describe that. And then, of course, the planet and the plane. And Colin was speaking earlier about how the Sevenfold Constitution is giving us a clue that also the cosmos and the universe has, in this case, the same constitution whether we call it 2, 4, or 7, or more. But if it wasn't that way, then something would be broken. But the idea is that, as it says here, for some it will be a clue. Although for others it's actually a protection.
Right.
To be ignorant is better to be ignorant than to know something and not using it well. So the idea of that this sevenfold constitution in nature and in men, then the keys are that we find that we are the link. There's a link between my body and the earth, the actual body and the actual plane of earth, which everything is septenary, everything is sevenfold, even the actual realm, we speak of it as the emanations and bad things of humanity, but it's also sevenfold. Because in the actual plane, we can use these 3 and the 4, 2, the triangle and the square, because we can say that in each one of these subdivisions, divisions have their own subdivisions. So therefore, the physical plane, we can divide it in 7. The actual plane corresponding to nature, for example, the earth has its own actual body. Otherwise, we will have a correspondence or a link. There's a prana or jiva. We're going to go through that. There's the kama, the idea of the desire, which is very limited to us. Is that idea of, like foka, is that principle that kind of connects matter, and therefore we are also connected to that. But then also, the Atma, Buddhi, and Manas, as we'll see, or the 3 higher principles, which is men, is also on the planet Earth, not on the Earth, but within the Earth. Therefore, we'll see that in this case, we have 7 globes in this chain. So that's the idea that we are connected to nature in that form. We are connected to the plane, to the planet, to the plane of consciousness, to the race, which is the 5th race so far, and whatever sub-race, 6 or 5th sub-race. And that is the clue, I think, that Blavatsky and Judge are giving us. But then each one of us is going to be kind of responsible for making those connections. And nobody can give you that, Blavatsky says. We can talk about rounds and races, but if you don't study and if you don't digest on your own, it's hard to understand when somebody else is speaking about rounds and races.
Yeah, there's this, it's silly, simile, but there's it's in a lot of science fiction kind of books and things like that. There's the idea of what if you went into the future somehow, or way far away in space, and came back, and it had been 5 million years. If humanity was still around, they would be unrecognizable as the same species completely. So and that's kind of like when we read about the first 4 races, it's similar to that. It's like barely recognizable. But yeah, that's why it's always interesting to hear, because a lot of times in press, or if there's someone doing a report or an article on Theosophy, always are going to ask about that one, because that's the one that you can look up online. And it's like, oh, is it racist or not or something? And it's really great listening to good Theosophists explain that, and just the way they're able to just kind of shoot that down and just fix that whole concept right away. So yeah, thanks.
Okay, well, we should get into it since Roberto brought it up. We should just go right to page 31.
Oh boy.
So here he's giving the English version and also the Sanskrit version. So starting from the material plane and going to higher planes or states of consciousness and more ethereal matter. The first is the body, or here called rupa, which would be considered like a form or a shell. The second, vitality. And here he has it correspond with prana and jiva. Prana being like a step down from jiva, jiva being the universal energetic principle pervading everything, and that prana being only in the physical body, or, the physical body exists with the infusion of prana. And then the astral body, which is the form, or the inner form that the physical body is attached to and molds itself on. Different than the skeletal form. Skeletal form we see is like bones and stuff. That's still part of the physical body. This astral body is an electromagnetic body that then the cells are all based on and through. It permeates them. Then the next one, here it's referred to as animal soul, or the Kama Rupa. Kama, as Roberto mentioned, being a desire principle, and it's in all of nature. The basic desire to live, all that aspects of it fall under the category of instinct, but also are just innate. Why does a flower or any plant grow its roots into the ground and then the stem comes up to the sunlight? There's an intelligence there, but there's also the kamic nature, or the desire for it to express what its purpose is. If the plants did not have kama, would they grow every year? Is it just a time clock that makes the plants grow, or are they linked to a universal desire principle, which expresses it and forces it to manifest? It's something to kind of consider. Then, the fifth principle, human soul or manas, which manas, it corresponds with mind. And then spiritual soul or buddhi, we could say buddhi is universal soul, universal consciousness. And then spirit or atma, which everyone has it, everyone is a part of it, but there's one spirit that we all participate in. So a lot of times in theosophical talks, you'll hear people say higher and lower manas. Manas is kind of, we can think of manas as the fulcrum between states of consciousness. Our normal everyday thinking, we're in lower manas, or our mind is functioning through the desire principle. What we want, what we don't want, what we like, what we want to avoid, what our aspirations to, as far as work and what you want to accomplish in life, all that is basically lower mind. Then mind itself, or just manas pure, we could correlate it to your soul, memory, and consciousness. If each person is just one expression of that soul, in every personality, we have experiences. We cause things to happen. We endure things that happen to us. We try and learn from experiences. We have families, we have jobs, we have relatives. We may or may not have families. All that accumulates a certain amount of knowledge. And that knowledge has to be stored somewhere. Otherwise, what's the purpose of reincarnating? Is a new baby born with a fresh brain, a fresh soul. It's here one time, and whether it lives 3 hours or 130 years, that's it. We know that there's trees that live for a few thousand years. We know there's sharks that can live 500 years.
They've got that one they've been following out in New Zealand that's 800 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So does it, shark. Yeah. So does it make sense that, the most intelligent form of animal life, humans, only live for that short duration, and then there's one time and it's gone? It doesn't make even logical sense. So we could say that manas is the accumulated individualized wisdom from different personalities. Buddhi is the collected wisdom from all individualized souls. whatever.
But the term collective unconscious is not enough for that, right?
Well, it's not
It's
very,
conscious.
well, it's a collective unconscious to us if we don't raise our state of consciousness to that.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's not a collective unconsciousness, it's collective consciousness that we are either aware of or not aware of. And then, spirit, we could say spirit or Atma is the source and the power for all these principles. And everyone, you don't say you have spirit, you in essence, you are spirit. Your spirit and your soul, and that soul is a mind. And so, Roberto mentioned about the three higher principles. Those three higher principles are the mind, buddhi, are linked to the universal consciousness, and spirit or Atma. And that's what comes back and reincarnates time after time again. If we develop our ability to meditate to the point where we can disassociate madness from our personal life and not have it, not for a long time. If you're meditating, you're meditating for an hour, you're meditating for 3 hours, you're not allowing you meditating for 6 or 8 hours. What does that mean? That means he's changing the polarity of his mind to function in the higher nature of the universe and himself, as opposed to functioning in the everyday world, in the senses and in the desires of everyday living. And as we're physical beings and personalities, that's part of our karma, but that's not all of our karma. Our karma is while we're in a body, to some point in some particular life, whether it's this life or the next life or 40 lives from now, nature is progressing to the point to get us to where we can change our state of consciousness to be more and more aware of this higher state of consciousness, because then we're acting in harmony with universal consciousness, universal purpose, and the whole plan of the universe. It's not some arbitrary plan. It's not, the idea of having a God telling, oh, I'm going to punish that person today because they were mean. Oh, this person was pretty nice. I'm going to give them, I'm going to let them get a promotion at the job. It's that alone, us doing that ourselves is a pretty big chore. Trying to figure out, as a small personality out of all the millions of people on the planet at any given moment, to figure out you're going to do this or you're going to do that based on this lower mind is pretty much impossible. You're being guided by senses that we know are not always accurate. You're being guided by judgments that you make that may or may not be accurate. You're being influenced by your nature, which is this kamic desire nature, which most meditation books say to get to this higher state of consciousness, you got to get off the desire plane. You got to, what is likes and dislikes, you got to not judge by likes and dislikes. You got to judge by what needs to be done, whether you like it or not. What is your duty at a particular moment in time? Not what you want to do, not what you don't want to do, but what is the real purpose of what can you do to make today a better place than it was this morning? And so all these different principles are within us, and they all have a state of consciousness. It's just we're not aware of it most of the time. And they're all can change their polarity. For instance, Atma, it being at the top, here number 7. Atma is the guiding power principle. That's where all of our abilities, all of our powers come from. Is the positive principle trying to influence. Buddhi relative to Atma is negative. Buddhi is like the photographic plate that Atma registers the intelligence on. So in that respect, Buddhi is a negative principle. In our normal state of consciousness, since Buddhi is universal consciousness, it's gathering all the consciousness from every experiential being. So it's also negative to the lower plane of mind. Our lower mind impresses what we learn, what we experience on universal consciousness. Our mind, or manas, normally is impressing that consciousness. If we can quiet that mind, then it can be negative to universal consciousness and can be receptive. So in a certain sense, we might think of Atma and Buddhi as the sun, and our mind as the earth plane. So as long as there's no clouds, we can get the intelligence and we can get the understanding from the mind, from Buddhi, universal consciousness. But if our mind is disturbed, then we're kind of creating clouds, or we're stirring up the water of mind, and it won't reflect accurately, and we won't even understand what is being shown through. If our mind is quiet, like a lake, or like if there's no clouds, then that intelligence we can receive. And the mind is, in a sense, it's negative to that, but it's blocking and it's not participating going into our lower state or our kamic mind state. And we could say that that's really what you're trying to do in meditation. In meditation, you're trying to turn your attention away from your personality, your desires, your feeling, the senses that are hearing the cars go by, that are hearing the dog barking down the street, and trying to listen and pay attention to these inner promptings from this higher state of consciousness.
We might definitely be getting to this in the article, but it's a question I always have when I see this. So on number 4, the animal soul, Kamarupa, we talk about Kamarupa a lot. And so it seems to be kind of unique on this list, as it's a process, it's a place, and it's a thing.
Well, yeah, you could say that the Kamarupa is the mind shell that we make with our lower mind and desire. When we talked about elemental, there's a whole plane of material that we don't see with our eyes, but is electromagnetic and exists on the astral plane. And whatever we think and feel, it impresses that. And so, if you think about, some people say, man, I'm just on a really bad run of luck. It's like I got a black cloud hanging over me. You do. You've created a black cloud, or the Peanuts character, the little cartoon character. There was Pigpen, and everywhere he went, it was just 30. That's basically a Kamarupa. It's an astral form that we build by our desires and our thinking.
So it's like a grasping identity that we've created, like our lower kind of identity, our baser identity.
Yeah, but it has an actual form.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why when we get into, after death states, in the process of dying, first your physical body dies. But then this kamarupa, when your body is completely rotted out, there's still going to be a kamarupa that is built on part of the astral material. This Linga Sharira, this second principle or third principle that we talked about. It's going to take a little bit of time for that to dissipate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know, it might be what Bear's looking up, but if you look it up in the Kamarupa in the glossary is amazing. It's so well described, and then it's also harkening back to the spiritualism and stuff. She talks about, what happens if someone tries to pull one of these things down, into a medium or something, and she literally calls it a pisacha, and if you look that up in Indian and Hindu like folklore, they're like cannibal monsters. It's pretty scary.
Well, if you think about it, it's basically the same idea of Dracula.
Yeah, it even says yeah.
It's the same idea of Dracula, except it's not really material physical, it's astral material, semi-physical. But on a higher aspect, it's also what the adepts use. They use their mind and build what's called a Mayavi Rupa, or we could say a fake image that they can then put their consciousness into to go places where the physical body isn't. So the thing is, understanding why it's really good to really get a deep understanding of the 7 principles is when you read about anything in metaphysics, it gives you kind of the mechanics and the consciousness and the material behind it. Because otherwise you're kind of trying to form these concepts of, well, what's the difference? Like, what's the difference between a Kamarupa and a Mayavi Rupa? They're both rupas, they're both forms. One, you could say a Kamarupa is what we all build up by our personal mind and thinking. And a Mayavi Rupa is what an adept does consciously for a specific purpose to do outside of their physical body. So things that seem almost impossible, like, let's say someone showing up in this room, say, oh, it's a ghost. It might be a ghost, it might be a Kamarupa, or it could be an adept with a message for you. And how would you know the difference? How would you know?
I was going to that part because, as I mentioned earlier, each principle is an age. It has the lower and the highest part. You mentioned the highest part now. And if we go to the glossary and see Kama Deva, then that's the highest part, because Kama is just, a desire to manifest itself in a way without personal, attachments or anything. That's universal. But then in our realm, we call it Kama Rupa because it's the body of desire, right? Form of desire, personal desire, you can say. So Kama is the first conscious, all-embracing desire for universal good. Love, and for all that lives and feels, needs help and kindness. The first feeling of infinite tender compassions and mercy that arose in the consciousness of the creative one force as soon as it came into life, being as a ray from the absolute. So see, that desire, Kama-rupa, it has a lower part, which is lower part, Kama-rupa, but then the highest is Kama-deva. So that's thanks to that energy or force, or however name we give it, is what the universe manifests through that. And therefore, he mentioned the Mayavi Rupa, right? The body of the adepts. So there's that material there, or what we can say that we can transform our Kama Rupa into later on to be a Mayami Rupa, because you're gonna be focusing your mind in a different shell, you know, and obviously you have to do a lot of work. That's why we have the voice of the silence. Another way of what Connie was mentioning about, you know, becoming or getting glimpses of those higher principles. In the voice of the silence, it speaks of the loving deeds. Is a child of knowledge, right? Something like that. So all these loving deeds, we have in the declaration. The working for humanity. All of this has to do with these principles, so we can change not the nature but our nature to not to correlate from our parents. Although we're doing that, but the idea is to transform it into a body for helping others, and that's where the Mayami Rupa comes. It's a vehicle for the adepts, so they need something to kind of work with humanity, even though they do not attach to those forms. But it is said that they can do that with the power of the mind. Sometimes they use Kriya Sakti for that, is another term, which is the power of the thought to create forms.
So it seems like, yeah, with the main difference with the Maya Rupa and the Kama Rupa is that the Maya Rupa is being consciously developed and controlled, whereas the Kama Rupa actually seems to control the lower mind.
Yeah, in this case, I think the motor person is controlling my lower mind instead of the opposite, right?
Instead of the opposite, yeah.
Also, Colin mentioned about, he mentioned about all the principles. So the body, the actual, it's there too. Where our true senses are in the astral plane. We know that in the physical we have the organs. Or is the opposite?
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so the organs or the senses, so the senses are really within ourselves. And therefore they're participating with all these principles. Whatever our motives are, then we tend to either feed the lower Kama Rupa, the lower form, or we can feed the higher part, as Kelly mentioned. So the idea that prana and jiva is mentioned here, and Colin said, so prana is the same as jiva, or we may say that prana is an aspect of jiva.
Yeah.
Because jiva is universal. And prana, so when jiva is in a form, then it's called prana. Let's see, make away with the form, and then you have jiva.
Yeah, if you think about what's the difference between prana and jiva, as far as this constitution, our physical body and cells need prana. Our astral body doesn't really need prana. These astral forms can exist in jiva. So we might think of the astral form as like a transistor or transducer to step down the energy from the higher planes so that it doesn't burn out the physical body. And when your physical body,
Say it again, please, about what you say.
the astral form, we can think in another way. The function of the astral form is to be able to absorb prana from jiva. Jiva is too powerful. It would be like plugging your phone into the street light, and the street light's going to blow your phone up right away if there weren't step downs. Our whole grid is based on a 120 system. If you were to plug in where the power comes in from the big power lines, It usually comes into a building and you see all these weird, like coil things. They break the power down to 120. But if you were to get the power straight from the power lines, the big power lines that come in, it would just immediately fry it out. It would just explode. So,
But in some book, I'm sorry,
yeah,
because I want to be clear, in some
Yeah.
book I read, Jiva is before I burn. When I burn, it's transformed and prana. Is it the correct way?
I don't know about that. Because burping is still physical. It's
No,
still
burn or
When-
burp, like,
Cuando nace, se convierta en.
No, she said when she's born, then run. I think she's right, because see, if,
wait,
let's say you don't have a body,
born or burn?
born.
Born.
when you,
Okay.
yeah, she's right, when you have a body, then it's called prana. If you don't have a body, it's Shiva.
Well, wait a second. The baby is within the mother.
No, but she said, let's say, Tanya is not within a body.
Yeah, if you're not in a physical form, whether you're a fetus or a person or an old person, if you're not in physical form, you're in prana.
Shiva.
In Jiva, I'm sorry, in Jiva. Yeah. That's why in any after death state, we're existing in prana. Our memories and our mind, all that state of consciousness is in the pranic realm or foci, I think you said. Let me, this is a good spot. We talked about it a few weeks ago, but let's go to this one second. Let's see. See if I can find it here.
It's like Barbara just joined.
Oh, boy. Hi, Barbara.
Hi, Barbara.
Well,
Hi, everybody. Very interesting meeting. Thank you.
That's a good one. When Colin finds out, also, when she mentioned the three higher principles, Atma, Buddhi, and Manas, all of this has been personalized in many systems or religious systems. So sometimes, the spirits or Atma is the father, the Buddhi is the mother, and then therefore the son, which is Manas, is the universe. And so we can see that all of this terminology is being personalized, or anthropomized in the form. But in reality, these names only represent that within ourselves, which was mentioned, Atma, Buddhi, and Manas. But it's being personalized in a lot of, and symbols and everything. And I think that's why in many cases, we lost some of the truths that Theosophy is kind of giving us back to understand that there's nothing really outside of ourselves. It's all within ourselves.
Did Barbara did you just turn on, or did you get any of the Sevenfold Constitution that we just gone over a little while ago?
Yes, I actually arrived 7 minutes after.
Oh,
So that was great. Thank you.
okay, regarding what Tanya just brought up, we're gonna go to chapter 5.
Oh, yeah,
Just skip a little bit, it's on page 35.
Oh, she's back a little bit.
Yeah,
Forward.
forward, 35. And we can go back, but I wanted to bring this up.
Before, yeah, we're gonna go back.
We're gonna go back,
Sure.
yeah. So we talked about it a few weeks ago, but I want to read here what Judge says, because he's talking about prana and jiva and how they function in the body. And so I'll read a bit of it. It says at the bottom, starting where it says, one of the mysteries of physical life is hidden among these lives, in quotes, their action forced forward by the life energy called prana or jiva, will explain active existence and physical death. They are divided into two classes, one the destroyers, the others the preservers. These two war upon each other from birth until the destroyers win. In the struggle, the life energy itself ends the contest because it is life that kills. This may seem heterodox, but in theosophical philosophy, it is held to be the fact. For it is said, the infant lives because the combination of healthy organs is able to absorb the life all around it in space and is put to sleep each day by the overpowering strength of the stream of life. Since the preservers among the cells of the youthful body are not yet mastered by the other class. These processes of going to sleep and waking again are simply and solely the restoring of equilibrium in sleep and the action produced by disturbing it when awake. It may be compared with the electric light, with the arc electric light, when the brilliant arc of light at the point of resistance is the symbol of the waking act of man. So in sleep, we are again absorbing and not resisting the life energy. When we wake, we are throwing it off. But as it exists around us like an ocean in which we swim, our power to throw it off is necessarily limited. Just when we wake, we are in equilibrium as to our organs and life. When we fall asleep, we are yet more full of life than in the morning. It has exhausted us, and it finally kills the body. Such a constant could not be waged forever, since the whole solar system's weight of life is pitted against the power to resist, focused in one small human frame. Now, with that, let me go back to page 33. And here in this section, he's giving two really interesting statements without fully explaining it. But on page 33, where he says, the first break, this quaternary or lower man, where, we just talked about the passions and desires, life principle, astral body and physical body. So what he's talking about here, this quaternary or lower man is the product of cosmic or physical laws and substances. It has been evolved during the lapse of ages like any other physical thing from cosmic substance and is therefore subject to physical, psychological, and psychical laws. Yeah. Physiological and psychical laws which govern the race of man as a whole. Hence, the period of possible continuance may be calculated just as the limit of tensile strength among the metals used in bridge building can be deduced by the engineers. Any one collection in the form of man made up of these constituents is therefore limited in duration by the laws of the evolutionary period in which it exists. Just now, that is generally 70 to 100 years, but its possible duration is longer. Thus, there are in history instances where ordinary persons have lived to be 200 years of age, and by a knowledge of the occult laws of nature, the possible limit of duration may be extended nearly to 400 years.
So again, here, even the quaternary is a product of cosmic or physical laws in substance. So we were speaking earlier about the correspondences, with nature. In this case, our quaternary and the cosmic quaternary And so therefore there's the connection. We have the connection to the planets, so we have the connection to the solar system. The solar system is also sevenfold. We can go on and on, the galaxy and the universe, but we're status within our cosmos or our solar system. Then we see that there is that constitution even in the solar system. And the idea here of prana and jiva, I think is the idea that if there was no form, then we can say there is no aspect of jiva, which we call prana. Because there is form, then that's jiva becomes prana. Only because jiva being universal and let's say colorless, then once in a form, we give it a color with all our thinking, emotions, feelings, and all of that. So we color jiva, and now we call it prana. So even in the planets, the planet has prana based according to the constitution of the planet, or humanity as a whole in a way. And we can go on and on, and that's why the idea of the law of analogy and correspondence help us really to get out of our small oceans of life.
And I think that's what Roberto is talking about here when it says psychical laws. It says, it is therefore subject to physical, physiological, and psychical laws. Well, whenever we read in Theosophy, psychical, it's not that I can tell you your future. It's talking about mind and thinking. The mind is a psychic activity. Whether it's a lower psychic activity or a higher psychic activity, it's a psychic activity. It's a psychic power. Now, some of those powers are very average mundane powers, like logical thinking, learning arithmetic, learning a language. That's a psychical power. The higher aspects of it is being able to know things at a distance, being able to pick up something that someone else has had and pick up the memory impressions of the students that have picked up this book. That's a psychical power, but it's a higher psychical power than what we normally have developed. But when we read about psychometry, that's a psychical power that someone has the ability to touch an object that someone else has worn a long time. Like if you have a ring or something that you've worn for a long time, there's people that can hold that ring and it has the impressions that you've put on it. Just like if someone was able to get in your computer and go through the history, it would see everything you've been looking at. We have machines to try and do what our mind has the power to do. And if we take some of these clues, it's like someone saying, if you go in the water, you can swim. It won't say it. Wow, that sounds great. You jump in the water, you don't know how to swim, you drown. But if you see enough people doing it and someone gives you the clues as to what you need to do to swim, then you can, swim, but not so good. And eventually, people can swim really well. But you have to develop that power. You have the innate power, but developing it takes work. And so, some of this, when you read in some of the theosophical books about, like when HPB was coming on the scene and telling people why they shouldn't do seances, she was explaining that what you're calling into the physical world is really Mayavi Rupas, or the shells and with the worst aspects of the personality that then are coming to this plane, but to exist on this plane, they have to absorb the energy of the medium, or they have to take the prana from the medium to be able to manifest on this plane. And that's why, like when we were talking, the stories of vampires, it's not that someone's breaking into your room and sucking the blood out of you and then they can live for 100 years. It's that they're drawing your life force out of you magnetically. That's what we're talking about. Just like if you're around someone and you say, oh man, if that person has a bad attitude, I get worn out being around them. Of course you do. Because they're so disruptive that they're kind of, on the one hand, you're using energy to not be affected by it, but on the other hand, they're drawing your energy that's feeding their rage and anger and frustration and whatever else their bad vibe that we call it is.
Now, also, that could mean that you have an affinity to that.
Yeah.
Because you didn't have an affinity to that, then they will withdraw nothing out of you. But I mean, that's not easy, right? Because I mean, it's like what you said, it happens for all of us. It's like, they taking the energy out of me, which, it's true. But then the idea that you say things are at work, if we begin changing, then you can be around people, that source, and they can do nothing to you.
You're not affected.
You're not affected by it. And that's the idea that how we are connected and we are kind of sharing prana in a way,
Yeah.
and therefore they can, or maybe we are the ones, sucking up the energy from others, and thinking it's not me, but maybe it's me.
And that's the thing, here where we read, it said prana and jiva is the ocean of life that we all exist in. The same way fishes live in the ocean. Once you pull them out of the ocean, they can't breathe pure air. They have to have water going through their gills to get oxygen. And so that's a physical thing, but in the same sense, we're in this whole atmosphere of prana, which we're taking in and throwing out according to, how it's saying here. And that either rejuvenates us or we get to the point where we can't resist the life force and we get burnt out. It's a weird coincidence, we could say, but I think it probably points to, it's not really a coincidence that if someone doesn't get sleep for 2 or 3 days, you feel like you're vibrating.
Start to feel like Kamarupa.
You're really exhausted and tired and you can't sleep and you're just shaking. I mean, that's how they would torture people, keep them awake for hours and hours.
There's this feeling, I used to have I still do, I have really bad insomnia and stuff, but before I would really address it, I sometimes not sleep for like 4 days, and after like the 2 days, there's this thing happens where you're no longer exhausting, but you feel like you're in the back seat of what's happening in your life. You're not driving, you're just, feels like you're in the back of a movie theater just watching. And you're just watching yourself go through the motions, but you're not really doing it. It's weird.
Another part that I wanted to mention is when Colin was speaking of describing Alma, Buddhi, and Manas. There's many ways, of course, and here on page 32, on the paragraph before the Septenary Constitution, where it says, this Trinity is that called Atma, Buddhi, Manas in Sanskrit. Difficult terms to render in English. Atma is a spirit, and nothing else is here, but Buddhi is the highest power of intellection. That which discerns and judges. So here, they're speaking of a different intellection, not the intellect that we normally speak of, maybe use. Because they're speaking about this higher intellection that you are able to discern. And to discern what? We might say to discern the real from the false. What we call illusion or Maya, and what is real within you. So that Buddhi can do, that's the highest power of intellection. So we might say this is really spiritual intellection. And so Because sometimes intellect gets advanced, advanced.
Yeah.
But, it's really, it's part of ourselves, it's Buddhi, really, it's purest. In its purity, it's Buddhi, really.
And if you think about why is it that it's able to discern? And it's not because it's my intellect, it's because it's everyone's collective experience and understanding that it's giving you that discernment. So, there's a statement, and HPB makes a statement about the adepts when they were exploring these inner states of consciousness. And it said any experience had to be tested and verified by other adepts before it was accepted as real.
What I read, they said they have to experiment.
Yeah, and it's the same thing that our scientists do on this plane. If you make a discovery, first off, you have to do it again and prove it the same way. Once you can do that, then you have to put it out to other people that are in the same research, and they try and do the same thing. And if someone proves that it doesn't work, then they have to figure out, what did you do different than what I did? These 8 people proved it, and you must have done something wrong, so you got to redo your experiment. And it's the same thing with mathematics. Mathematics, someone figures out a formula, it has to be a proof that everyone else can do it.
Yeah.
And so that was what it's saying. It's like, so this power of discernment, you could say, is a universal understanding that everybody has. And it can either guide you or, you get intuitions from it. Sometimes you have an intuition about something that is really a big decision for you. And then you have to kind of think as to, well, is this just a hidden desire of myself that I really want this new job, or I really want to move? Or is something prompting me to make this change in my life that's going to really make a important decision for me?
I think I just figured this out, but I was looking for some clarification. In the glossary, it seems like it's probably not a secret thing if it's in the glossary, but it says for Buddhi, it's universal solar mind. Mahabhuti is the name of the Maha Sialaya, also the spiritual soul in man. The 6th principle, the vehicle of Atma, exoterically the 7th. Is it saying exoterically the 7th because it's the vestments of Atma? So most people in most traditions only see the vestments, the vehicle.
Yeah.
Right? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Just clarifying that for myself.
If you think that all the different principles are different substance and powers, and they have their own function, but in a manifested universe, when there is material, there has to be a consciousness that works on this plane. Otherwise, all the beings that make up this material, the chemicals and the cells that make up this table have the 7 principles, but they're not active. So what we think and how we live is impressing a certain amount of the mind principle in these. Now, eons from now, these tables might be a lower form of animal life. The cells that make up this table, they're already plant-like. But in a future cycle, then that intelligence and that material will be material that the animals, just like we use this same material to make our bodies, but we're impressing the consciousness with feeling and thought and self-consciousness. And you could say that's a key function of human consciousness. One is to come here as an experience to awaken these lives to a higher state of consciousness. The other big task is for us to be able to raise our state of consciousness to our true state, which is a a Mahatma state that we originally had. She said, you know, as Atlanteans, we had more higher consciousness than lower consciousness. But the involvement with material became more and more an attraction. And then we lost more and more of this higher ability to think, because we were focused our thinking into the material plane.
But at the same time, even if we lose, that part, the mind, they have the link, so they can reverse that thing.
Yeah. And that's really the whole point of the Sevenfold Constitution, is to remind us that we have that link and that we participate. You have a dream, and people, you think about dreams, but what is it that sees if you're sleeping and your eyes are closed? Roberto was saying that we have our senses are on the astral plane. But those senses just send information to our mind. And then our mind has to make an understanding of whatever those senses send us, whether it's a sound, whether it's a color, whether it's a picture or a description. So it's really understanding rests in the mind. Our eyes don't really see anything. Our eyes are the lenses, like a telescope, that are bringing it into our true senses, which are in the astral body. And then they're making an impression on our mind. And then our mind figures out, tries to make sense of what we're seeing.
I don't know where it is. Sorry, it might be actually in this book, or it might be a secret doctrine, but it's said, I know it's been said a few times, the most esoteric or hermetic sense is hearing, especially in other realms and things, because it's that perception, not like it's in, and if you're there, if you're there with your monist and you're ready, that reception is, unfettered. It can be received purely,
Well,
But
that's
the voice of the silence too,
maybe
is
that's where-
to merge all thy senses into one
Mm.
sense. So the inner sight, the inner hearing, they say also hear with your eyes, see with your ears, but then eventually merge all these inner senses into the one sense, which is knowing, discernment.
Well, the other thing, if you go into different traditions, the voice of silence, the book is saying, what is the voice of the silence? There's a voice there. You go to the Christian tradition, they say, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and God was the Word.
And they say the still small voice.
It's still small voice. Or Akasha being the first really plane of substance, its attribute is sound. But it said that you can't really consider sound as an attribute of Akasha, in the sense that it is an attribute in the way that our self is a self of us, which is a hard concept to get, but it's saying Akasha, the very first expression before anything can happen, or the substance which everything happens in sound. And
that's why it's one of those golden threads we talk about. It's in so many things, that first voice, that first word or sound or utterance. I mean, in so many indigenous faiths too, the first sign or evidence of God is him speaking his own name or something like that.
Well, and then going along, because what you said about hearing, so what is sound? What sense can sense sound?
Yeah.
So it's hearing. And then sight, as Kelly mentioned, the voice of the silence, the hearing and the sight, the sight of the eagle and the hearing of the timid dog. And so therefore, we go back again, speaking of races, it is said that the first human race develop healing because sound is the first, aspect of akasha. So sound, healing, and then sights. And so in each phase, our senses develop. So we have sound, we have sights, then we have, I think if we have, what is the other one? Smelling is the last one, because it has to do with the earth. And touch, I think it's, so it's hearing, seeing, what is the other sense? Touch,
And
okay, and smell, that's four, right?
Yeah.
Only four senses.
The fifth sense maybe is that combination of all of them, not an extra one.
In a
But
way,
also the hearing, they say, is the equal for the ether. The ether.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, right,
Yeah.
that will be a fifth.
And that's it's universal.
What did she say that Akasha is sometimes erroneously referred to as ether, but they're very related, right?
The related ether is a lower plane of akasha, and the astral light is a lower plane than ether.
Excellent.
Yeah, you mentioned one time, so ether, it has to do with the form, with the quaternary in a way. Akasha is everything.
Oh, that's
Or we can say Alma, Buddhi, and Manas correspond to the state of Akasha. So ether corresponds with the quaternary, the cosmic quaternary. But then there's another one called aether,
oh yeah, ether.
which are different. So we say that Akasha is the highest plane or the purest plane. Then we have aether, and then ether is the lowest plane of Akasha. If we do it again, the sevenfold constitution,
Right.
then ether will be the lowest.
And that gets to another aspect of this, because in Theosophy and some other teachings as well, they talk about the 49 fires. So the 49 fires are just subplanes of these seven. So we could say on the physical body, all these, there's a physical correspondence to these seven. There's a Atma, Buddhi, Manas, and we, here on this page 33, it breaks it down into a different way. So if we go to the part that you have, it has brains, nerve, blood, bones, lymph, muscles, organs of sensation and action, and skin. The unseen physical, the astral body, the passions and desires, and the life principle. But we could say on the astral body, on the astral plane, if you were able to see on the astral plane, the physical things that you would see on the astral plane are physical astral. There's an astral below that. There's an astral kamic nature on that plane, and so on all the way up. There's a monastic astral. There's a Buddhic astral, and those on each plane. So as you go up, as you go to Kama, there's a physical Kama, there's a astral Kama, all seven. So that's the seven subplanes of each plane.
And then there's gonna be seven of all those too, right? Seven.
Not really. I mean, to me, I don't think, I think if you keep breaking it
It'll
down,
stop somewhere,
yeah, I mean, the point is not to keep dividing things. The point is to try and understand how you experience in that plane. And then how do you elevate your consciousness to the higher plane? We're trying to get to the plane of Buddhi Manas. But we're trying to do that. HPB says to become an adept, you have to do it while you're born in the physical body.
Yeah.
You can't be an adept when you're in Devakam. Or when you die, then you don't just automatically become an adept. You have to develop these abilities while you're in a physical body, while you're dealing with your kamic nature. And you have to actualize these states of consciousness some point in some physical existence. That's the natural evolution that the universe is progressing to.
Mm.
So you could try starting now, and maybe you'll do it in your next life. Maybe you'll do it next week. No one knows their individual abilities and time frame until you actually put it into a practice.
Mm.
But the understanding of it will help you. So when you, like when we read The Voice of the Silence, and it talks about the astral plane is a plane of learning. It's a plane of learning because it's a semi-material plane that we don't have enough experience on generally, but you don't want to spend all your time getting the experience there.
Mm.
You want to realize it for what it is and move on.
Yeah.
You know?
Just like with meditation,
Yeah.
Does Barbara have any questions?
Has anybody got any questions while we're still, man, we did not get very far even. Amazing. But yeah, like,
Did you record?
Huh?
¿La está grabando? Did you
Sí.
record?
Yeah.
Oh. O sea,
We got
no tuve-
we're definitely gonna have to be continuing, but, I find, I was gonna say, yeah, I find it, theosophically, it's probably counterproductive to keep dividing things just to divide them. Like, I think the divisions are just until we have an understanding of things, because theosophically, we're trying to unite all that stuff, not just continue to just divide it all. I mean, at some point, we want to bring it back together as well. We're only dividing it into the components we need to understand it, and then to, yeah.
Well, she says, well, what we read is that you can multiply or divide to the infinite.
Yeah.
But, at this point, says we should at least, take care, meditate about 7 times 7, the 49 fires. Which means because in our planetary chain, there's only 7 rounds. So that 7 is repeating itself in a way, in a globe, in races, in our senses, everything. So once, if we at least assimilate this 7 times 7, which, you have to become an adept, really, and that's why when we were speaking about Buddhi, different aspects of Buddhi, universal, all of that. That's why Buddha was called Buddha, because he acquired that level of consciousness. And so for now, we can think about 7 times 7, the meaning of that. And what it really is, he named the 49 fires. What is the meaning of 49 fires? What is the meaning of fire itself in Theosophy?
I'm not a big Zohar Kabbalah person, but I definitely know 777 is a big deal with it.
It's being,
Yeah.
in the Bible.
Yeah, that's it. That, yeah, I wonder that it just there. It's even in this stuff. I think, like, not even in this stuff, but there's still, it's not as cut and dry as it may seem. You still have to come at it with a little bit of that intuitive reasoning. You could just completely trying to understand this logically is tough, but I think it can be. But I think that intuition definitely helps.
Well, as it was mentioned, if we believe in reincarnation, if we start to believe in reincarnation, then we know we can start now. Or maybe we're not really starting. We're just, continuing with this. So even though this is not linear, in a way, we may have already, we've been there already, in a way, in this higher states of spirituality. We just have forgotten again. Every time we are born, we forget. Just like we were talking about the movie, The Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
You repeat your life in one day, repeats many lives because you forget. In this case, he doesn't forget, but we forget, and then we come into existence again, and it's just like this reawakenings every time we are born again.
Is that one of the we talk a lot about the psychic abilities, latent in man and stuff. Do you think? I mean, is that one of the good ones? One of the to be able to have impressions or even visions and experiences of your past lives? Like, is that one of those kind of positive psychic abilities that can be used to really advance?
Well, that's what's in the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah,
is knowing because if
but just the Dalai Lama said it for the first time I ever heard him say it, that he remembers his past lives.
well, it would put things into perspective. I mean, if you look at your own personal life and think about how you were in the 7th grade and all the experience you've had since then, if you did not remember that, how pretty useless your personality would be today. So if you took that and multiplied it by even a few lifetimes, it would put into perspective why you're in a position, why you're among the people you're among, and what is really important in life, what is not important, and what is accomplishable, what a direction you should maybe focus in, all that. But at the same time, just like, people that go through therapy, there's certain things that you have to forget or you have to put behind you. Otherwise, you never move forward. So you're kind of blocked by memories that would hold you back.
Yeah.
In a certain sense, not being able to remember is a gift until you can handle being able to remember who you were.
My buddy he's a very strict Buddhist, he says one of the things that like negative karma that people don't kind of think about, but this is a teaching where in his school is that really negative karma, we talk about how you tend to reincarnate among other souls, right? He says really bad karma, you can reincarnate completely alone, but cut off from those people that kind of that you have some kind of continuity with,
Right.
as a eternal family or group or something like that. But really bad karma, one lifetime you can be completely on your own, like spiritually and karmically almost.
Well, also another aspect to think about is that the two most magnetic experiences that we have are things that we love and things that we hate.
Yeah.
People we love and people we hate. So you have to be really careful about hate because you're linking yourself to a future time to work that out.
Yeah, it's impressing somewhere. You're printing that.
You're printing that and you're building a pretty big magnetic field. Let me read the end of this page 34, and then if you want, we can go in next week in chapter 5.
For sure.
It says, let us recapitulate before going into details. The real man is the trinity of Atma, Buddhi, and Manas, or spirit and mind. And he uses certain agents and instruments to get in touch with nature in order to know himself. These instruments and agents are found in the lower 4, or the quaternary. Each principle in which category is of itself an instrument for the particular experience belonging to its own field, the body being the lowest, least important, and most transitory of the whole series. For when we arrive at the body on the way down from higher mind, it can be shown that all of its organs are in themselves senseless and useless when deprived of the man within. Sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smelling do not pertain to the body, but to the second unseen physical man. The real organs for the existence of these powers being in the astral body, and those in the physical body are being but the mechanical outer instruments for making a coordination between nature and the real organs inside.
I think in the chat there, Rose, I don't know if she wants me to say it, but she makes kind of a good point that, that there's a lot of teachings that it's not considered, a big deal or something to really strive for to be able to know your past lives. Because again, that will be a form of attachment. Right. In a way, maybe you're not seeing the true path. You're seeing something you might assume is the true path because it's in some higher, some past life where you were maybe situated a lot better than you are now. And so you're like, oh, well, being like that must be the way to be. So it's another form of attachment. I totally get that. I don't know if that was the point you were getting at, Rose, but I like that.
On the page 414, if somebody wants to know, they say they ask about the sevenfold. They say, they say, now, my view, everything has a liar point.
A liar point.
Liar point.
Yeah.
If you want to liar point in the mash box, you will find it. This is nothing in this world that has no God in polarity. Has to be important part. Polarity.
Polarity.
Clarity.
Yeah.
No, no, no.
Okay, you're doing fine.
Yeah, good.
Okay, and it's 7 principles from the higher to the central one, which is the liar point. It becomes something interesting for me. Not that it's something somewhere inside within, but as I say to you, everything has so many degrees. This is important for me. Everything, because if we keep in mind everything has degree, I have to respect. I have to control to be respected because everything has 7.7 division, but like you say, potential.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
but in the same moment, it's also active because the plan they act, but as a plan at the same level.
Yeah.
Level of plan. Let's say continue say. If you take the thinner thing that you can conceive of, say the cobweb, la telaraña, ¿cómo se pronuncia? Cobweb. It will have the 7 again, the 7 planes. You see, the one of that is visible, which answer to our perception, which is sense by us. And the second, which is being the less sense, and so on, until you don't see anything. And the last one will be liar. So it's talking about, everything, no exception.
Yeah.
No exception, as they say about life.
I think you're referring.
Tanya, where is that? So I can put it in the chat. What book and page?
She's reading from the
Secret Weapon,
dialogues.
comment dialogues.
Oh, put it in the Secret Doctrine Dialogues. Okay, well, sure there's a PDF somewhere. That's good.
Page 414.
In a sense,
Yeah, there is a PDF. It's not ours.
Yeah.
It is ours. It's just the one available on PDF. It has a long introductory and different things because they printed it in Europe.
We have hard copies here.
But this is, but anyway,
Did you say 404?
414.
4141.
But I think they have it on, ULTLA Phoenix.
Oh, they do? Oh, they got a lot of stuff there and the UK website too. Before we go, I was gonna ask.
the thing to keep in point when she's saying the liar point. The liar point is, we can think of as like, the liar point in this room is the doorway. At some point, you go through the door and you're into the hallway. So every plane, the astral plane is not a really, like if you have an electronic microscope and you look at a cell with an electronic microscope, you're not looking at the astral plane. You're looking at a very small aspect of the physical plane. The astral plane, there's a liar point, or there's a place between this plane and the next plane. And then between that plane and so on. And so in a sense, the liar point isn't an infinitesimal small point from one plane to the next. It's a change in the actual substance of that plane. You know, between air and water, there's a point where you're not in air and then you're in the water.
Or Steve.
Or I mean, that's how they say that if you look close enough between me and you, you can't tell where me ends and you can't if you look close. Like again, we're not really touching anything. There's still air between me and this table and this paper. There's something that's incredible.
You were gonna say something.
I was gonna ask, I found this little chart that I really like on Blavatsky. It's a ULT website, Blavatsky Archives. It's a really cool little just graph and stuff, and all these of what we're talking about. And I'm just gonna send the link. It's they're ULT, so it's just posts and put into some kind of cool graphs and stuff.
Which ULT is that?
It's called BlavatsyArchives.com.
I got ULT.
That's
Yeah, but I mean, it's fine.
Oh, I thought they were ULT. Okay, does anybody have anything to add or closing thoughts?
That'll do it.
Okay, thanks for joining us, Barbara. Thanks for your contributions. You too, Rose. That was a great comment.
Thank you. I have to think about it and ponder on it a little bit because it was a lot of stuff at once, and I'd like to read the material over again and give it more thought because there are things that I see while we're talking, but it's hard to form them into proper wording to get a question out of it right now. So I'd like to just read it over again and see, like for example, form and things like that, the different Platonic forms and they move and how they're connected to the soul and stuff like that because it's spoken about in the Platonic books. But there's something that I feel that's connected to it, but I'm not really sure. It hasn't really formed itself totally in me so I can understand it.
It's still forming in the aether.
Yeah, it's still forming in the heart.
In her mind and heart.
Yeah. Great. Well, yeah, we'll chew on this some more next week. I think, because I think it'll be really useful.
Okay.
All right. I'll send out the recording tomorrow and come back next week with your ideas and questions.
We're gonna continue with that or?
Well, we can go into the next few chapters more explaining. Yeah.
Cool.
I think the next two chapters.
What book is this from?
This is from the Ocean of Theosophy.
Ocean of Theosophy. Okay.
We're on chapter 5 and then maybe chapter
4.
Oh,
and then
chapter-
we'll cover 5 and 6 next week. We'll go into that where it talks more about the Sevenfold division. It's by William Q. Judge, The Ocean of Theosophy.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I think I read that one. Okay.
Well, on the ULT website.
Oh, I sent it to
You
you.
sent her?
Yeah.
Okay.
Very
I sent it. Okay, so look at that.
We
I don't have my computer. That's why I have my phone, and I really can't read it from there. So I have to go back to Scottsdale, where I can download everything on my computer. Yep.
well, at least it's Scottsdale. It's a nice place.
Yes, there was 122 degrees
Oh,
one day.
that's
Oh, and then it was 115 yesterday when I left, and I came up here and it's only 79 degrees. What a big difference.
Where is up there?
Sedona? I'm in Sedona now.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah,
Beautiful. All right.
Much
well,
cooler. Yeah.
much cooler.
I was in Los Angeles. Is it hot there?
yeah, I mean,
It's like 90.
yeah, but it gets cool at night still, so fine. Yeah.
It's been a long time since I've been there. I used to live there.
You didn't visit us here.
Yeah, I would like to do that sometime. That would be great.
Yeah.
Where exactly are you guys?
We're right downtown, right by USC, like a block from USC.
We're at
downtown.
33rd and Grant Street.
Okay, so right in the city area. Okay.
It's just south of downtown, right next to USC.
Okay. I used to live in Pacific Palisades
Yeah. Well, we're,
on the coast there. Yeah. So what would it be, about a half hour from me? Where I used to live?
we're east of you. East of that, we would be off the 10 and the 110.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, I'd like to do that. Yeah, that would be great. I don't know when I'll be able to do it, but I'd like to. Yeah. Look forward to it.
We love
Thank you
having
very much, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Have a good night. Pretty painting, Rose. Have a good week.
You too. Bye.
Bye.